Hi Guava Bees, and welcome to another episode of the Dear Guava Bean podcast. Remember, submit your questions in the Guava box or on the website and we could be answering yours in the next episode. I'm Francesca and with me is Claire.
Hello.
And today's question is, Dear Guava Bean, I'm looking for an entry-level travel-related remote job. I have a lot of customer service experience. I used to be a flight attendant. I've worked on a cruise ship and I have a lot of waitress experience. I've never had a computer-based job, but I do know the basics. Do you have any ideas? Okay, this is an interesting one, especially at the time of recording this. I know that a lot of people maybe have had travel-based jobs or have been in the travel industry and now are looking for new ways to use their skills just because the current freelancing climate has changed. So I've been seeing a lot of kind of travel-based questions and sort of topics and things all over social media and in some of the groups I'm in. Is that something you've noticed as well, Claire?
I have noticed that a lot of people in the travel industry, because of the whole coronavirus situation, are out of work. It's really unfortunate if you were a tour guide and you relied on that, and now it's all gone. And so I know that there is a need for remote travel jobs. And so I think this is a really interesting question. And I think it's something that a lot of people would like to know. You know, it sounds like almost the ideal job, an entry level travel related. If you're the type of person that loves travel and you're just getting started in freelancing, this is a really good question to ask.
I agree, and it's so funny, isn't it? Because you never assume, or I certainly don't assume, that a whole industry can suddenly change, basically overnight. So I can definitely see why this is something that I'm seeing a lot more of, and just generally I can see why people maybe want to get into this now. So I think it's requiring a lot of like creative thinking about how people can use their travel experience in a new way. So I know that there are obviously a few kind of, when I think of like travel, I do think of sort of travel blogs, or I also think of like YouTube content. And it tends to be more like content creation I think of when I think of travel, you know, because other than that, I think of like the traditional sort of travel agent kind of job, which, I mean, that's changed so much now. And as you say, Claire, I know that particularly people who were doing things like tour guides, that obviously a lot of them now can't work at all. I recently spoke to a client who was looking for help because they used to have like a yacht chartering company, and then they can't do that anymore. Just overnight, their business is just, you know, completely changed. So yeah, it's an interesting topic, definitely. I mean, what would your first suggestions be? Because as I say, I mean, when I think of any kind of travel job online, I'm thinking of content creation, but I think there must have to be more than that.
I think there's a lot of content creation with online just because we think of like blogs and photos and videos. But what I would suggest is looking at what are the entry-level remote jobs, and then how can you use your travel experience combining with those entry-level jobs. Like, for example, we all know that copywriting is an entry-level remote job. And so if you have a lot of experience with customer service, maybe you can copyright for a travel service or a customer service company. Or maybe you can write blogs for a cruise ship company or write blogs for a restaurant. If you have waitress experience, you can combine that with copywriting, which is an entry-level job. And then you create like a little job that's perfect for you. It's travel related and it's entry level. So that's one way that I would go about it. Like virtual assistant is another entry level job. If you have the basic computer skills, you can be a virtual assistant for other travel bloggers. You know, I would look at what other people are doing and maybe contact travel bloggers who are well established and see if they want to hire a virtual assistant or a copywriter or a social media manager or anything. But I would start, first by looking at the remote early entry or easy entry jobs. And then I would also look at the travel companies that are available and think about what kind of services do they need. Do they need SEO? Do they need copywriting? Do they need customer service? And then try to fit in with that. And then, just start pitching your services, reaching out to people, contacting these travel blog websites or famous travel bloggers that you see on Instagram, and just getting your foot in the door.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. So rather than using kind of just looking for specific travel jobs, as in, I'm trying to think of the beginner and thinking maybe looking for sort of job postings and things, trying to use travel as a niche and then deciding how to fit in those entry level jobs into that niche. I mean, we have to also consider that there's a lot of travel companies right now who might be panicking a bit because they can't do their normal, they can't conduct business as they normally would. And so they're trying to take things online, maybe for the first time. And also they may be looking for new customers. They're trying to reach new audiences that maybe they didn't reach before. So that's going to be maybe looking at for someone to do content marketing or a lot of online research, as you say, for sort of like blogs and maybe even creating online communities now where they can market their services to. They didn't have to do that before. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting one. I always do think of sort of blog writing as a good entry level job, as I know you've mentioned copywriting as well. But yeah, I mean, if you've got customer service experience like this person has, you could definitely look at approaching the travel companies who've now maybe taken, as I say, taken their business online, or they have more of an online presence now than they once did. So you can use that experience. You could do that in, as I say, online communities. So you could do this in places where people are building like maybe a subscription model or a membership model, and they're trying to help their customers. You could also do things like managing a live chat. You could do email. You could even do calls. There's a lot of multi-channel kind of avenues that companies, that they take now. That they maybe wouldn't have done before. So that's also definitely a good thing to look at. I'm curious as well as to now that as I say, the kind of situation with traveling has changed in a lot of countries, whether people with travel experience may be able to coach others in this new way of maybe traveling and things to consider, and maybe helping people understand the new ways to travel. They could find clients that way, or they may work for companies who already do that. There's a lot of different things you could consider, but I think you said, the main thing we're talking about here is using those pieces of experience that you have in, say, customer support or waitressing, and using them in the travel niche. I don't think you necessarily have to specifically look for travel job postings, but rather look for those general entry jobs and find travel companies and maybe reach out to them. I know you've already said that, Claire, but I'm just kind of reinforcing that I think that's a really good and smart way to do things at the moment.
Yeah, I like your idea also. You said something about people moving virtual. There's a lot of people who are looking now for virtual solutions. And so one way that you can show that you have experience in the travel agency is by coming up with some of these solutions that can help these travel companies right now. And if you pitch your solutions to these companies, they may hire you to implement them. Like if a local tour guide company who can no longer run their tours, maybe you can pitch to them an idea of doing a virtual tour. And maybe they could go with cameras and, for example, if it was a tour of an ancient site or something really cool, they could go in with their cameras. They could still do the tour, but they could record it on video. They could sell like virtual tickets. They could there's a lot of fun things that you could do if you have deep knowledge of the travel industry and of the problems that people are going through. And then you come up with creative ideas and solutions. And then you're the natural person to help them execute those solutions. So you could you could help people with their social media. If these companies before, like they've never used social media, they now need an online presence. So you could be a social media manager for travel blogs, or you could help these companies do photography so they can take their services and their courses online. There's a lot of stuff. Like, I know someone who worked as a PR specialist for hotels, and her job was to travel to these hotels and write blog posts about the experience. You know, she would review the hotel, she would write about the facilities and about the food, and it would be, like you said, content creation. But that's a travel related entry-level job if you have experience writing, if you know how to write. There are hotels and restaurants and places that will pay you to come there and stay with them, and you write about it, and then you give them that content. Or if you work for a magazine, you publish that content. And that's one way that you can kind of travel and work online. I know a few people who do that, and it takes a little bit of time and experience. You have to know a bit about what you're talking about if you're going to review a hotel. But if you're passionate about it, and let's say you've worked on a lot of cruise ships, then maybe you're the perfect person to review cruise ships. Mm-hmm. And you can carve out a little niche, being the girl that goes on these cruise ships and writes a review, and you post it on your blog. And that could be a little niche in itself. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can use your experience to look for opportunities.
Definitely. And I just had another idea actually while you've been mentioning that, Claire. I also like to think of like how to branch out a niche too. So we're talking about travel as quite a broad niche, but it's also interesting to think about how what other niches you could potentially branch into. So people who travel, they might be looking for, say, hotels or flights or a guide around the local area, but you could also potentially work with companies that, let me try and word this properly. So people who like to travel, they might purchase certain things. So they might look for, you know, anything from luggage to good laptops to travel with, to travel insurance, to lots of different things. But these are all potentially things that you could think about. If you were a person traveling, what would I use? What would I buy? And these are also brands and companies you could potentially reach out to that could have a need for this travel experience. And again, like you can look at maybe customer support or content creation or something like that. So that it doesn't have to just be like holidays or traveling for work, but it can be more specific. Think about the things that these people might use, and that gives you a good idea of the kinds of companies you could potentially approach as well.
I recently did one of the podcast episodes with a travel blogger, Chantel. She is a travel blogger and she does online marketing, and she's a body positivity activist. Mm-hmm. And she is a digital nomad 100%. You know, she travels and lives in other countries, and she's managed to make it work. And the way that she does it is, you know, she has her blog, so she writes her posts. But then she also works with certain brands, you know, the brands that are aligned with her body positivity message, brands that want to get their products out there. And so they send her their products, or they show her their products, and she helps them write a blog post about it and get it out there in a way that isn't super salesy. You know, it comes across in a really organic social media way. And so that's something cool that you could do if you wanted to be a travel blogger. Like you said, sometimes people don't know what equipment to use. And so you could partner with companies that sell luggage, and you can write these really good blog posts reviewing the luggage, talking about all the pros and cons of it, showing how you would use it. And you could do that for all sorts of things, anything that you need to travel with. But there's that road that I know a lot of travel bloggers go down, and that works out pretty well. But you could also do kind of like a travel coach on YouTube. That's a fun idea. You could have your own little YouTube channel, and you can make videos about, you know, if you're going to Thailand, this is what you'll need. This, you know, remember to take all of this stuff. And if you're going to Russia, this is what you need. And just that kind of stuff. There's so much opportunity if you really love the industry. It's just a matter of how creative can you be.
Most definitely, and it's probably another good point to mention if you are looking to go down that kind of route where you're almost becoming an influencer or somebody that creates content that brands are then interested in once you gain a good following. Obviously, that's quite a long-term career path. But also, there's another side to this which is really good. And I know quite a few people this has happened to, where someone creates a blog or a YouTube channel or something like that. And they actually gain freelance clients that way as well, because they have this online presence. You know, companies that, you know, you might not just work with companies for sponsored posts, but people actually might go, actually, I love the way you write. Would you like to actually have a paid post on our website? And then that way you can find paid work in an active way, as well as creating that your own following. So it works both ways. It's like you create content, but it can have a multitude of uses. And that's what I really like about being a freelancer is you can kind of do something for yourself and gain your own following. And in turn, that can help you find new clients that way. So that can be quite nice. And another thing I did want to mention is this person who sent this question in said that they don't have a lot of computer experience. And there's one thing I wanted to point out, which although this has been quite a tough time for a lot of people in the past few months with COVID, one positive I've noticed, and it's a huge positive, is that so many companies with, you know, online tools and platforms and things have created these amazing training centers for using their tools or trying to teach people how to do certain skills for free as well. A lot of this is for free. So if you're worried about being able to do something and you haven't done it before, the chances are you will find that online. And obviously we have a lot of our own tech tutorials as well, which is super helpful and beginner friendly. But obviously some companies choose to do their own as well, which go a little bit more in depth. You know, for example, places like Canva have their design school. You know, Zendesk, if we're talking about customer support, they have a huge help center. So don't feel like if you are a beginner and you're worried that you can't do something, don't feel like you can't learn it, because I'd say now is the best time to do it, because there's so much help available and so many resources that you can take advantage of, and you don't even have to pay money for a lot of this stuff. It's free. You know, even if you do work with computers, I'd still say, you know, there's a lot of good stuff to look at. So, you know, I'd definitely encourage anyone who's beginning to look online for the support, because it's there.
Yeah, that's a very good point to make. You don't need to have a lot of computer skills. There's a lot of jobs that you can get started and then learn the skills along the way. You can take specific courses, like let's say if you decide to become a virtual assistant, you can take a virtual assistant course and learn the specific skills for that. So yeah, I wouldn't let the computer skills be something that gets in the way of doing your job, because like you said, there's so many good resources out there that you could always find what you need. But I guess just to wrap this up and referring back to the question, the first thing that this person mentions is that they have a lot of customer service experience. I always say that you should go with what you know. Mm-hmm. If you're going to start something new, the safest thing to do is to do what you know. And so if you have a lot of customer service experience, I would just try to merge that together with a remote job. So you can do online customer service for a travel company, for example. You know, any company that sells travel equipment or travel packages or luggage or tickets or anything, you know, you can start pitching your services as a customer service agent and start working with these other travel companies. And then just from there, you can eventually, if you want to get into adding on some virtual assistant work or adding in some copywriting work or adding in some social media work, like you can expand from there, but always use what you know and then just try to take that online. So just try to take your customer service experience online with a travel company if you can. That's what I think is the easiest way.
I agree. It's like taking the path of least resistance. There's no point trying to overcomplicate things in the beginning. We're talking to a beginner freelancer who's looking for an entry level job. And I do think we've talked about a lot of possibilities, which are possibilities, of course, for entry level people. But yeah, I agree. I think that's probably what every freelancer does start off doing, is just using what you know, being able to create an active income, and then evolving it if you want to later down the line, most definitely.
Yeah, or even pursuing two different things at the same time. Like when I started, I was working as a copywriter and a virtual assistant because I didn't know which one I wanted to be. You could start out as a customer service rep and start writing blogs on the side. Start your own little travel blog and work for clients on the side so that you can build up your own following doing the thing that you really love, but you can still make some money and work for clients and get experience and get paid. And then eventually maybe your blog becomes big enough that you can do that full time and you don't have to do the other customer service work. But that's one way that you can develop. Sometimes you just have to start with what you know and then build up your dream job on the side.
We hope you enjoyed listening to the Dear Guava Bean podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow Guava Bean on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for updates and new episodes. As always, our goal is to empower you with the information, inspiration, and direction you need to achieve financial freedom through online work. For more content like this, join us in the Guava Bean Freelancer Toolbox. Just go to guavabean.com to start your free trial now. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. See you in the next episode.